Bart's New Friend is one of those Simpsons episodes that always reminds me how, when it comes to media, execution is always king. You hear about the concept of this one, this hypnotism tale of Homer magically thinking he's a 10-year-old boy, and think, wow, this sounds ridiculously gimmicky. And they brought in Judd Apatow to write it, based on a spec script he wrote years and years ago. It's the kind of episode that could have gone wrong so easily. Nitpicky Simpsons dorks years later wondering, what the hell was up with this thing? But Bart's New Friend does such a wonderful job taking this wacky sitcom premise and applying it to the Simpson family dynamic. They integrate it so well, they totally trick my brain into forgetting this is a schlocky hypnotism plot. I'm 100% along for the ride with the characters. I think what the script gets right is its down-to-earth approach and its careful build-up to the central gimmick. Act 1 of this thing is pretty sleepy, to be honest. Whenever I rewatch this thing, I always find myself bored during the first few scenes. Don't get me wrong, it has some interesting ideas in it. I like the idea of there being a second safety inspector for Section 7G, who has been quietly covering for Homer all these years. It's a funny little solution that would explain a lot of things, as well as creating an inciting incident for why Homer becomes a stressed-out workaholic. On the other hand, Act 1 does feel remixy of a bunch of other Simpsons ideas. Someone retiring from the plant, Homer being tired and overworked, a visit to the circus. Hell, even Act 1 culminating in a hypnotism shenanigan has been done before. Twice, actually. Considering it's season 26, you're obviously going to get some repeated plot elements. It's just the execution of these moments can be hit or miss. Most of the Springfield nuclear power plant action is painfully dull, between the retirement party and Homer's banter with Lenny and Carl. What is this stealth bathroom joke? Thankfully, the circus stuff fares considerably better. Unlike in Skinner's Sense of Snow, this time they don't hang their hat on satirizing the actual performance. Instead, it's a very funny Homer Grandpa flashback, internet Wi-Fi jokes, and Homer's Seinfeld-esque diatribe about stacked parking. I get the impression someone in the writer's room had a stacked parking routine in their pocket. Homer talks about it so much. So while I find it really slow to get going, this is the kind of Act 1 this episode needs. Especially since things are about to get conceptual and offbeat, you need this Season 2-esque opening. It effectively establishes Homer's frustration with adulthood and highlights his current relationship with his wife and kids. I like how they handle the hypnotism reveal. This childish, yes you are, no I'm not, back and forth. It just goes on forever and ever. It perfectly captures the inanity of arguing with an annoying kid. In general, they nail Homer's characterization as his 10-year-old self. I think this aspect is the secret sauce of why this gimmick feels so organic. They're not asking the audience to buy into a sudden character change. Homer's always had a streak of childishness written into him. Really, all they need to do is strip away his adult vices and his worldly cynicism. It frees up Homer to be this lovable goofball with not a care in the world. There might be a temptation to add some pathos into Homer's characterization, maybe showing how being a kid again is not what it's cracked up to be, maybe Homer feels ostracized by everyone, or perhaps playing up how the lack of a real father figure affects the kids. Lisa does mention dealing with the emotional trauma of the situation, but this is treated more as a self-aware joke and occurs off-screen. I could easily imagine a heavier version of Acts 2 and 3. But, to be honest, I prefer the more carefree approach they took here. They give us scene after scene after scene of Homer and Bart having so much fun together, enjoying this newfound bond as best friends. And they don't forget Lisa either. This sequence of Homer singing along enthusiastically is so ridiculously charming. It almost upstages the Homer and Bart action. Lisa is barely a factor in this story, but damn do they make the most out of her screen time. So good. All of this stuff is super fun, but crucially, the episode keeps its finger on the pulse of its various character arcs. Act 2 shifts any internal conflict to Bart's direction. Since Homer is the idyllic happy-go-lucky kid, all of the anxiety gets put on Bart's shoulders. What happens when Homer changes back to an adult? Does he want Homer to change back? What does Homer actually want? At the midpoint, Homer and Bart discuss what they think they'd want to do when they grow up. And Bart asks Homer if he thinks he'd want to have a stable job and family. Homer replies, and I quote, "Wife, 3 kids, steady job? If I did, I would secretly be very sad. You could tell by how much I would eat and drink and just sit on the couch." Like, obviously, this commentary is very on the nose. There's an argument that this is redundant, that we already get the gist of Homer's adulthood unhappiness. But I think the contextualization of Homer's full character, not just the temporary workaholic stuff, is important. It totally makes sense why Bart doggedly tries to prevent his new friend from changing back. I appreciate how they underline the psychological aspect of Homer's condition. Initially, they have Hibbert describing how Homer's mind needs him to believe that he's 10 years old, like some kind of defense mechanism. Then in Acts 2 and 3, name-dropping this dynamic again. I think it's a clever little narrative hedge, that they're not going all in on this being a magical hypnotism plot. I mean, the whole thing is basically a magical hypnotism plot. I'm no expert, but I'm pretty sure this isn't how hypnotism works. However, by putting the emphasis on the Homer psychology angle, it gets the audience focused on the character relationships, which is really what this episode is about. Even if you think the plot device is utter bullshit, it doesn't hinder one's enjoyment that much. Homer's overall character arc is surprisingly understated in regards to the resolution. Bart runs off with him to Itchy and Scratchy Land, and when they're finally tracked down, Homer willingly goes along with changing back. Because they chose the 100% breezy and fun route to Homer's second childhood, there's a danger that his character arc feels muddled. There's no direct justification for why he psychologically wants to return to his sad adulthood. Like, as a point of contrast, let's consider the ending of Penny Marshall's 1998 classic, Big. In that film, the main character, after finally finding success and acceptance in the adult world, realizes being big isn't what he actually wants in his heart of hearts. They put in these scenes of him thinking about his childhood that he missed out on. In Bart's New Friend, there's no similar moment for Homer. Like, he doesn't see a couple at Itchy and Scratchy Land and wistfully misses adult relationships. But I love that they don't feel the need to hammer this home in this case, that they rely on the audience intrinsically understanding that subconsciously, Homer knows he needs to return. Being in the TV medium, as opposed to film, definitely helps out here. We all know Homer so well, understand that magical special bond that he and Marge have. One of the reasons I mentioned Big earlier was because there is a kindness and a bittersweet understanding to this ending that reminds me of that film. How Bart is up in his room eating lasagna and watching TV, like young Homer described, and how Homer talks to him about his friend that he remembers who was a really, really great kid. God, this scene is so aggressively sweet. It's such a nice little capper to Homer and Bart's magical friendship. I think they were wise to instead end with the Homer and Marge bedroom scene as a sort of bookend and a welcome back to the adult world proper. This thing isn't fundamentally a Homer and Marge relationship journey at all, but the episode does constantly include Marge's POV throughout, demonstrating how much she misses him. We probably could have used a little more of this, to be honest. I like how, when asked by the hypnotist if there's anything she would change, all she can think of is a post-snuggle cuddle. God, this scene is so aggressively sweet. I quit. The sweetness is too much for me. Thank God we're in the awkward fourth act bumper era, because at least we can cut some of the treacle with a funny Wiggum joke. Oh, hey Loki. You can probably tell from this review that, from a joke's perspective, Bart's New Friend isn't exactly the funniest thing in the world. This is one of those that you watch for the character charm, not rapid-fire gags. Some people are going to find it kind of bland. That being said, there are some standout jokes. It has a good feel for Skinner and Chalmers banter, arguing about the rules allowing Homer on the playground, then Chalmers' exasperation with Skinner's little drawings. Ouch. I love this screw the audience joke from Marge when she's missing Homer and pulls a little something out of her bedside drawer. The hypnotism guy is pretty great overall. He and Wiggum play off of each other well. If you're really into that Disney ride Soarin', finally there's a parody for you. And Homer, while mostly staying in the cute range of humor, does still have his trademark manic energy. I mean, he literally punches Bart in the face. That's gotta be worth something. Now we need a Simpsons Mysteries of how many times Homer's punched Bart in the face. To be honest, I've always struggled in taking Homer and Bart seriously as a character duo. Like, these two are obviously the wacky fun time gang. They get all these ridiculous shenanigan plots together. Their personalities are so suited to some kind of mayhem. So much fun. But as a true character duo, I've always found Homer and Bart's relationship stories somewhat superficial and lacking, compared to Homer Lisa, Marge Lisa, and the rare unicorn that is Marge Bart. Like, if you've looked at my output for this channel, Homer and Bart's relationship is one I almost never discuss. Homer and Grandpa? I'll talk about that to death. I'm such a sucker for a good father-son story. But even in a truly great Homer and Bart episode, like Bart the Daredevil, I don't find myself 100% invested in their bond as parent and child. Neither of them are especially mushy characters, so they can struggle in opening up to each other in a meaningful way. Say what you want about gimmicky hypnotism plots, but this is the fresh take that their dynamic needed. Bring Homer right to Bart's level, whittle away any father-son antagonism that might get in the way. If Homer and Bart are basically bros, let them be bros. Bart's new friend understands how Homer and Bart want to relate to each other, and as a result, always keeps things light and fun. We get one of the most compelling Homer and Bart relationship stories in series history, with basically no sense of conflict between them. I think that's really cool, making this fleeting adventure between them feel even more magical. I think this is the perfect example of what I want out of a season 26 episode of The Simpsons. Unique concept, adapted well to the existing show, with wonderful character writing. Yeah, I think Act 1 could definitely be much stronger, and the humor more consistent throughout. I don't think I would put this in the top tier of HD Simpsons, but I love that they rolled the dice and tried out this weird idea. I say, we should be embracing weird modern Simpsons more. Talking bar rags be damned. If you're looking for something that's both incredibly offbeat and incredibly charming, Bart's New Friend is an easy recommendation.